All right, hello everyone. This is CounterYolo, bringing you another video in Star Trek Online. And in today, we're going to be talking about the Legendary Galaxy X with the Legendary Mirror Bundle that's coming out pretty soon over in the next week. I'll talk about the Starship itself, obviously, because that's kind of what a lot of this channel is about. Talk about the specific stats of starships and how they compare versus lots of older starships and comparable ones. And then we'll talk about the other goodies. For my personal TLDW, frankly, at the end, it's going to mainly be that you either want the Starship for the Starship or you want the pack for the account unlock of the lobi outfits, frankly. The other stuff, frankly, isn't quite as good in my opinion, but of course, that's up to each person's own opinions on the matter. Feel free to see the time links in the description or at the bottom time bar of this video if you want to skip around and see some of the different parts that I consider more important to the video. Of course, as I mentioned in the last video, I am going to be using the best versions of every starship in the game, which means that I will be using Tier 6X or Tier 5X for all the various starships whenever I start doing the actual comparisons videos part of this video. So if you don't understand how experimental starship upgrades work, feel free to see the last video. I went into a decently good explainer. Obviously, Card Game Net over on his website did a pretty extensive amount as well. Both places have lots of good stuff for you. Now, as for Starship Comparisons, we'll obviously start with the actual raw starship itself. This new starship is a Dreadnought cruiser. Like other Dreadnought cruisers, it has a standard mastery package like you see on a standard cruiser. The difference, of course, being that you lose a little bit of damage resistance rating in the mastery package to get a little bit of crit chance, and you lose 2 of your cruiser commands. You still have weapon system efficiency and command distract fire, which makes this a great starship if you're wanting to tank inside of the game. Most Dreadnought cruisers only have a 4-4 layout in terms of weapons. A 5-3 layout or 5 weapons at the front, 3 in the rear is quite rare, respectively, in terms of Dreadnought cruisers inside of the game. The new Galaxy X does have access to 5 weapons in the front, so that is something that's pretty nice with this ship. Keep in mind, a lot of flight deck carriers at the moment are seen as superior to Dreadnought cruisers in the current state of the game. Dreadnought cruisers in general, though, generally have a little bit higher hull than the flight deck carriers inside the game. In terms of the Legendary Galaxy X, here's the bridge after seating and such. Like other legendary ships, it does not have access. You don't get any new consoles with this ship. You just get all the old consoles and old traits, and you get a new trait with the legendary version too. Like the old Galaxy X, it's got 4 tactical consoles as its base, along with access to dual cannons and a hangar bay and a lance. With the new version of the Galaxy X, it's got a commander intel seat, and that's really added to its lieutenant commander command seat. Whenever you make it a Tier 6X, you get that extra universal console and a 6th starship trait alongside it. Its new skin is the Mirror Galaxy skin. Again, we're still speculating because this is still a week out as to how good the skin actually is. In terms of the raw comparisons, though, themselves, as you can see here, versus the Legendary Galaxy and the old Fleet Galaxy X, the old Galaxies were very, very engineering bridge officer heavy. You're forced to have both a commander and lieutenant commander and engineering seat, which made the ship quite inflexible in terms of a lot of the bridge officer options. With this new Legendary Galaxy X, the lieutenant commander and engineering seat is now a universal seat. So there's a bit more flexibility in terms of what you want to do with the starship. Generally speaking, now I'd probably recommend using that lieutenant commander universal for tactical, frankly. And then it's up to you in terms of your personal playstyles, whether you make that ensign seat, engineering, or tactical. Versus the old Fleet Galaxy X, frankly, the stats are pretty similar still. You have a smidgen higher hull ratio versus the Fleet Galaxy X. But unless you really need the tactical seat, abilities from the Lieutenant Commander Universal seat, or if you're really going to go for a Cannon Sky Volley build and prefer a 5-3 versus 4-4, the Fleet Galaxy X is still perfectly fine for a broadside and beam build. So if that's a ship you have just for that type of playstyle, the Legendary Galaxy X is probably not going to give you that much extra stuff for what it's going to do, frankly. Now, the reason why there's been a little bit of discussion around the Galaxy X is because it's pretty similar actually to the Kelvin Vengeance. Part of the reason why, in my opinion, this ship did not get a built-in cloak that most Commander Intel ships get in the game. The Kelvin Intel Battlecruiser and the Sona Intel Battlecruiser were the lone exceptions, and now we have another Starship that also is Commander Intel without a built-in cloak. Anyway, a lot of us are believing that the reason why this ship doesn't have a built-in cloak is so that there's more incentives to basically say that yes, that the Kelvin Vengeance is still supposed to be superior to this ship. And yes, I mean, if you want a pure Oxtabat build, the Vengeance is still going to be better, because with the Legendary Galaxy X, you're pretty much forced into a half-bat build with one Oxtabat and one Photonic Officer 1 in terms of your cooldown management, in terms of how that would work if you want to do that type of playstyle. Kelvin Vengeance can do a pure Oxtabat build. And you have a bunch of options for your tactical stuff there. In terms of the raw bridge officer seating, though, it's super similar to the Legendary Kelvin. The only difference being is that the Lieutenant Commander Universal is command on the Legendary Galaxy X versus another Lieutenant Commander Intel on the Legendary Kelvin Intel. Keep in mind, though, you might say, oh, well, obviously the Drum Cruiser is better than the Battlecruiser, right? You also need to keep in mind, in the Mastery package for Battlecruisers, instead of crit chance, they get crit severity. So at the higher end, I'd almost still say the Kelvin Battlecruiser probably does have a smidge higher oomph, frankly, when it comes to actual DPS, because it's got an extra 15% crit severity versus 2.5% crit chance. And it's a bit faster, which for high-end people, speed matters a bit when it comes to your DPS runs. The faster you can get to places, the faster you can blow your stuff up and get to the next thing to blow things up faster. Also, the Kelvin Vengeance, its other thing besides this, its midget better bridge officer seating, is it has one of the best hanger pets in the game, and its hanger pets cannot be used on other starships. So that, plus that it's still a decently fast ship. The Kelvin Vengeance is still a solid starship. If you're someone, though, who has been considering wanting to get a Vengeance for multiple characters, the Legendary Galaxy X is a decent alternative, frankly. Also, if you wanted a Vengeance for your Federation allied Romulans, the Galaxy X is a nice option, because Federation allied Romulans cannot fly the Vengeance. It is one of the ships that they're excluded from flying, so you're forced to use like the Legendary Kelvin or the Legendary Galaxy X are two decent options, frankly, in my opinion. When it comes to lockbox stuff, though, one thing also to point out, because in my opinion this is really important, for a lot of your high-end Federation players, if you're a true Federation player, like if you're like TOS, regular Federation, Discovery Federation, something like that, and you're going to get the DPRM console anyway from the Atlas, here's the Atlas Dreadnought Cruiser versus the Galaxy X. Sure, there are differences. Yes, the Galaxy X probably has a little bit better seating, but not by much, in my opinion. And especially if we're going for tanking, I don't consider it a big enough jump in terms of its like bridge officer offensive capability versus the Atlas to really say that you should get the Legendary Galaxy X if you already have the Atlas and you're buying this pack just for the Starship. Also, that all being said, the sticks for a lot of captains in the game that are going for the more offensive version of tanking, that they tank through their damage versus more of their clickies and such, the sticks is generally considered the best. Not necessarily because of its bridge officer, but because of its very strong hanger pets, frankly, that has suppression barrage and attack pattern beta at really, really high ranks, at its higher ranked frigate pets. But its bridge officer, frankly, versus the Legendary Galaxy X are super similar. It's just the Intel seat and Commander seat are flipped, but otherwise its seating is the exact same. So if you're wanting to make the jump to the sticks, Galaxy X might be a step in that direction, frankly. Or if you want to need something instead of the sticks, this might be a decent alternative for you as well. When it comes to other legendary ships, of course I'm going to include the Legendary Odyssey because it's one of my favorite ships in the game. You're able to use the flagship console set with this thing, so it is one of the best turtle tanks as well in the game. I'm not saying that it can't do tons of damage, because it can do insane damage too. But it is just a great platform in general. It is a 4.4 lens instead of 5.3, so it's much better for broadsiding than for dual cannons, though you can do dual cannons with the Legendary Odyssey. If you want to do pure damage with this type of seating of Commander Intel, Lieutenant Commander Command, the old Legendary Template that we got a few months ago is going to be a bit better for you. Because it's Commander Tech Intel and it's Universal Command versus Engineering Intel and Universal Command. You're just going to have higher tactical seating for what you're going to want to be doing. I guess technically from a torpedo DPS standpoint, there isn't going to be a ton of difference, especially if you're someone who wants to do torpedo DPS and don't want to deal with the cloaking mechanic inside this game. The Galaxy X is probably fine, especially if you're not going to use the trait from the Legendary list anyway. What I will say though, versus like the Legendary Odyssey, something that's a little bit cheaper is the 31st Century Kronos Temporal Dreadnought Cruiser. It's a starship that, hey, if you want to spend 6,000 Zen on something else, you want to get 3 starships out of it, the 31st Century 3-pack in the C store is a very, very insanely good value. The Dreadnought Cruiser is fantastic. In my opinion, it is the best cross-faction tank in the entire game. Bar none, it's just the best. And its is very similar to the Legendary Odyssey as well. Just you have Temper Operative instead of Command. It actually lends to a little bit more flexibility, frankly. It allows you to do a little bit more offensive stuff as well. Also, its unique console set is pretty nice as well. The 31st Century Raider gives you a haste console very similar to the Domino console, just slightly less strong because it's an older console. The console from this ship is just about the best taunt console in the entire game. It is a taunt for a few seconds, followed by a bunch of extra crit chance and crit severity for a few seconds as well after the taunt ends. So guaranteed taunt plus extra damage afterwards to make it a near close to an extra taunt for a long time. So it's a very strong console for tanking. If you don't care about tanking, the haste console from the 31st Century Raider is still nice to add to this ship too for broadsiding DPS. And it's has decent turning for a Dreadnought Cruiser. If you want to go for flat damage and your KDF, the Martok Tactical Battle Cruiser, which is a flagship, is still a solid option too. Very similar Berserk scene to this ship. It's just that you don't have the Commander intel. Other than that, the Berserk scene is the exact same. And in lieu of the Hangar Bay and Lance, you have an additional tactical console for your starship. So if you're okay with that, I would say the Martok is a decent substitute, although not pure substitute. It's a decent substitute for what the Legendary Galaxy X would be. I really hope the Nausicaa Garumba Siege Destroyer is added as a legendary ship in the future, because that would be what the Galaxy X would be for KDF, and that would have Commander Tactical. But you know, Cryptic wants to release one ship at a time because I guess they find that that's more valuable than releasing KDF ships for some reason. Anyway, when it comes to the old and new stuff inside the game, we'll talk about the old stuff first. The Galaxy X gives you access to the old Galaxy class consoles. All of these are frankly pretty garbage. Touch separation is fun to use, but it's really not very good. And you lose a console slot for it. In terms of Galaxy X stuff, supplemental subsystems is really, really bad. This was only serviceable back in the day when Plasmatic Leech was actually good. It hasn't been good for a very long time, so don't worry about supplemental subsystems. It's bad. The cloaking device is fun. I wish the ship just passively had a cloak, and this would upgrade it to a battle cloak. That's what I feel that it should have been if you're going to make a ship Commander Intel and have it be this offensive monster. From Mirror Universe, I think that's what it really should have been. That's just me. 2P said does not make supplemental systems worth it at all. In terms of Starship traits, you get the two old traits, the one for the Galaxy, the one for the Galaxy X. The one from the Galaxy is complete garbage. Do not use it. The free traits, Starship traits from the game, you get from missions and stuff are better than this. Just pretend that this trait doesn't exist. The Galaxy X's trait is actually decent. It's not going to be super OP, but it's actually pretty decent. And actually on my cannon scatter volley tanks that I have right now, I've actually been testing this as a 6th Starship trait to use as a beam overload 1 kind of like extra filler survival ability. It's working surprisingly well. There are other traits that's smidgen better than this one, but this is actually held up decently well considering its age. And the new legendary trait, Best Hope of the Empire, in my opinion, seems to go along the same type of vein of thought as what Subsystem Redundancies kind of is for. These traits are kind of like used for, you have two basic options here. You either have it as, if you're like doing solo content with Beam Overload, it's a decent survival option. Or if you're doing a Cannon Scatter Volley tank build, you use Cannon Scatter Volley and you just use Beam Overload 1 for the extra proc and heal or temporary HP with the new trait when you need that extra temporary HP and bonus damage. It's for this reason why I don't really see DPS captains probably going to be veering towards this trait unless the bonus damage is ridiculously high, which I don't really see Cryptic doing at this point. It's probably going to be leaning towards the temporary HP, which means because Beam Overload is not really meant for DPS captains, but Cannon Scatter Volley tanks can use it in an instance just as a filler ability. Cannon Scatter Volley tanks are going to find a lot of value out of this trait. Whether it is a best in slot trait really depends upon how much temporary HP comes from this ability. The bonus damage doesn't quite matter as much. It'll be a nice bonus for sure. The temporary HP is what matters to me. If this, maybe it's like 30 or 40k extra temporary HP, I'm going to say it's probably going to be a best in slot Cannon Scatter Volley tanking trait. If it's like super low, like maybe only 5-10k bonus temporary HP, it might be serviceable if it has really high bonus damage alongside it. Again, I feel like if thematic was based upon subsystem redundancy, just means it should be more survival based than damage based, which is going to anger the DPS community. I'm telling you how I see this trait working out and how I'm guessing Cryptic is going to balance this thing. Now, if it's horrible temp HP and horrible bonus damage, then it's going to be just a horrible trait in general. So we will see how it turns out over the next couple weeks. Obviously, they'll show whatever it is on 10.4 weekly. It'll be weaker than there whenever it actually goes live, and then it'll probably be weaker than that afterwards. We'll see in that latest weakened state as to whether this thing is actually good enough for tanking it or for regular Beam Overload DPS builds. We will see in time. As for the other extras, because of course with a single Starship Legendary Bundle, 6k Zen seems pretty steep for a lot of players, even though, as I mentioned in the Anniversary Bundle video a long time ago, 6k Zen is the lowest that they're going to be releasing Legendary Starships as a base price standpoint. Maybe with sales it'll go a little bit lower, but we'll see. The extras this time were actually pretty decent. The Phoenix Store stuff is pretty garbage, don't worry about those. One of the things that people have been asking for a while is the Mirror Universe registries for all starships, not just for a couple, but for all of them. And with this bundle, you do get that. If you're a Federation Captain or Federation Ally, you get the ISS one. If you're a KDF Captain or KDF Ally, you get the AKS one. If you're flying a Warbird, you're able to use the ARW one. And if you're a Realm Repellent Captain, you can use the ARW prefix on any starship that you have. So there is that smidge of nice things to be a Realm Captain. My opinion, though, it's the lobi store that really is the biggest thing. That, like, sure, the prefix thing is for Space Barbie perspective. This is Ground Barbie. This is a lot of nice Ground Barbie that we haven't really seen in a while. And being able to have actual account unlock stuff that used to be in the lobi store is a pretty big deal. A lot of this old stuff used to be single character unlocked, which honestly kind of sucked. It's why I avoided buying a lot of things, because I'm like, sure, some of these ones look decent. The Mirror Odyssey I was considering getting for a while, and I was like, I don't know if I'd use the character long enough to warrant it. But hey, with a bundle like this, even if it's a one-off character that's only used a little bit, I don't feel bad because it's not just for one character. In the past, the uniform that I saw as well, particularly used a little bit, was the mirror Bordeaux uniform on the KDF side. That's what I really saw seeing the most, frankly, of the various parts. There's a couple of other uniforms that are also listed there. Most uniforms in the lobi store were between 150 and 200 lobi on average. Some are a smidge cheaper if there's like almost nothing that comes with it. Some of them can be much higher, like the Breen uniforms. Like I think it's 300 lobi because it's a lot of customization stuff and color options in there. Frankly, there's also a non-combat pet. I know there's non-combat pets in this game. It's been a part of the game I frankly completely ignored because it just doesn't matter to me. It's not like we can customize our Starship bridges and place pets in certain spots. Hi, Cryptic. Anyway, but like the biggest reason why you might not want to just say that this is super good is because the Discovery shows Terran uniforms are not included in this. There's a list. These things are not included. So, in my opinion, it's because these things are still selling well, while these older uniforms are not selling well. So, depending on what your personal value is in terms of these things, you might say, well, I don't care about these uniforms at all. I have no value. Or you'd be like, Carol logs of some of these older uniforms sounds interesting to me. If it's interesting to you, then it might be worthwhile. If not, then this whole pack, in my opinion, is going to boil down to whether or not you want the Starship and you want the trait. So yeah, in terms of TLDR, we have new 6K bundle in the C store. That's a Starship plus stuff. It is another Federation only Starship during the year of Klingon, which kind of sucks. Good news is that, I mean, this is basically a smidget weaker but account unlocked version of what the Vengeance class is, frankly. In terms of its actual damage potential, what the ship is supposed to be able to do, it's in the same role, like almost blow for blow as the Vengeance class. And so if you want something like the Vengeance class for Federation Ally Romulan and are wanting a Dreadnought cruiser instead of just a Kelvin-themed starship, this is a nice option. If you want a torpedo version of the Vengeance class, this is a nice option as well because it has Lieutenant Commander command alongside Commander Intel. Or if you're wanting a good can-scatter volley tank, Dreadnought cruisers that are 5-3 layouts are generally some of the best options for can-scatter volley tank builds inside the game. There just aren't a ton of them in the game. And of course, you want to avoid the Alachi Dreadnought cruiser from the promo packs because that ship is just garbage. Avoid that, please. In terms of the other goodies, its new legendary trait, Beam Overload and Lance abilities give you temporary HP and bonus damage. Because it's both of those things, I see this as potentially strong for can-scatter volley tanks and using Beam Overload in an extra ensign tactical seat, frankly. Unless the bonus damage is ridiculously high, I do not see this being used for your actual DPS chasers inside the game. Can-scatter volley tanks, potentially. DPS players, no. People that are soloing content with Beam Overload might find value with this as well. I think that's probably what its main purpose was, but I'm just telling you as a tank player how I see how this trait could be. We also have some Mirror Universe uniforms. Most of them are included besides the Discovery Show's Mirror uniforms, as well as the Mirror uniforms that are already for sale in the C-Store right now. There are a couple of them in there, and a couple of different bundles and individual purchases and stuff. Basically, if they aren't already in the C-Store and aren't the Discovery Mirror uniforms, they're pretty much already included in this bundle. So that's something that's nice. We also have the Mirror Universe prefixes, which is something that a lot of people have been asking for too. But yeah, that's basically it for this bundle. It's really up to you as to whether you want this bundle or not. I mean, for me personally, I'm going to be getting this bundle not even for the Starship. I'm getting it because of the account unlock lobi uniforms and for the mirrored prefixes. That's why I'm getting this bundle. For me, that is worth it enough to get to pay 6,000 Zen for. and I happen to get a Starship and maybe a nice trait for my Kansai Valley tanks that I have right now. If the trait's good, I'll be using it for that. If not, I'll be like, oh well, I don't really care too much. But I know, depending upon what things you're interested in this game, this might be valuable to you. It might not. Yeah. Hopefully, my discussion in this video gave you some ideas and some things to think about. There'll be more people in the upcoming week or so. They'll do even more discussions in their own points of view. So feel free to check them out as well as they get their videos and things up and running too. Thank you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.